The abiding presence in the quiet house. Julia moved through her house in a continuous loop of tasks: dishes, sweeping, sorting, tidying. The silence of the afternoon was not peaceful. It was a vast, echoing emptiness. Her husband worked long hours, and the children were at school, leaving her alone with the endless cycle of domestic duties. The isolation was a physical weight, manifesting as low-grade depression and a corrosive layer of anxiety. I'm doing all this, and no one sees it. I am completely replaceable. The lie whispered that she was forsaken, that her work was meaningless because it lacked a public audience or a helper. She felt the pressure of every crumb and every stray sock, convinced that the state of her home reflected the state of her soul, disorderly and alone. One day, while folding laundry, the task that seemed to symbolize the endless, unhelped nature of her life, she remembered a verse. I am not alone, but I and the Father who sent me is with me. John 8, verse 16. It wasn't just a distant religious truth. It was a radical, immediate statement of God's presence. Jesus, in his most human and challenging moments, lived in the reality of unbroken communion. Julia realized her loneliness was not about the absence of her husband or children. It was about the perceived absence of God in the mundane. She stopped folding and leaned against the dryer. Do not fear, for I am with you. The words of Isaiah 41 verse 10 resonated inside of her mind, making the promise intimate. She started to practice the presence of the helper she already had. As she moved to the kitchen to scrub the caked oatmeal, she didn't just scrub. She began to quietly talk to God. Lord, I'm scrubbing this because I choose to serve my family. I am doing this with you. Hold my right hand as you promised. The anxiety did not vanish instantly, but it retreated from a roar to a whisper. The next week, she decided to tackle the dusty bookshelf, a task she had been dreading. Usually, she would push herself through it in a rush of stress, fueled by the desperate hope of seeing the clean shelf and finally feeling good enough. This time, she chose communion over completion. She worked slowly, listening to quiet worship music, visualizing the promise from Genesis 28 verse 15. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. The house was still quiet, but Julia was no longer alone. She was working with the most powerful helper in the universe. Her mundane tasks became an altar. Her work wasn't a lonely burden for human applause. It was an act of worship in the presence of the unforsaken God. The knowledge that Christ, too, lived in obedience because the Father was with him, allowed Julia to find peace in her own hidden obedience. She realized the greatest gift was not getting a clean house, but knowing she was constantly seen, constantly upheld, and utterly never left nor forsaken.